Hi guys! Today I'll be showing you how I hand paint my model kits using cheap artist acrylics. For this build, I'll be using the old HGUC Gym Cold Districts type. You can see here that the part has already been primed. I use Bosnia Primer Gray. It's a cheap primer that's easily available here in the Philippines, and it can be bought for around $2 at any hardware store. I've been using this brand for more than a decade and so far have not encountered any problems. I'm using Reeves Acrylics and they are really cheap. They're not even artist grade paints. They cost around $13 for a box of 24 colors and I've been using them since 2012 and so far they've been good. They're not as tough as model grade paints but you can do with them, I'm sure. So, first things first, you need to thin the paint. I use these pill bottles and I thin the paint to about a consistency that's slightly thinner than condensed milk. You need to figure out for yourself since consistency varies from one color to another. I also have my brushes always dipped in water since acrylics dry up so fast. And you need to make sure that the brush is dry enough so that you don't mess up with the consistency of your paint before you use it. I also airbrush and have done quite a few kits using it, but I moved into a smaller house and I don't have a dedicated space for spray painting here, so I decided to go back to hand painting acrylics. I actually find this more relaxing since I find setting up and cleaning the AB quite tedious and brush painting is just way more relaxing. Also, compared to when I played around with Tamiya paints, I do not have to worry about wasting paint because Tamiyas are really expensive and with this type of paints I get more for what I pay for. Granted, you'll have to use more layers of paint, but for me that's fine since I don't really work on a kit straight, just a couple of minutes here and there. So the general rule is that you paint in one direction first and on the next layer of paint you paint in perpendicular or across the previous layer. But on some surfaces that's just not possible, like on this sole. In that case, just go at it. It does not really matter that much since the paint levels quite well if you ask me. Especially with these darker colors. It's a different story though when you're using white and yellow, sometimes even orange. So if I need to use those colors, most probably I'd go for a spray can or an airbrush. Okay, so moving forward, we'll just speed things up a bit since it's just me painting the parts, okay? Okay, so we now come to a tricky part. I do not like masking. Even though it's a technique that we can use even when we are hand brushing, I often find that it's unnecessary, especially when the part you're going to paint is raised or has a panel line which makes it separate from the main body. So basically I try to avoid masking and just paint with a small brush and just go about it carefully. I use small brush strokes And if I did my job in tinning the paint right, eventually it will dry flat and level. While I'm doing this, I think it's proper to say, or warn at least, that paint addition is not the same as with model grade paints. But the parts can be handled. It's not like paint will peel off just for touching it. It's just that they tend to scratch off easily. So as fair warning, I have to say that you really need to top coat your kit if you want to play around with it. I tried test fitting some of the parts earlier and some of the paint has already chipped, but that's okay since I'll be weathering this kit. It's my mistake actually because I did not top coat first before assembling some of the sub-assemblies, and from my experience working with my past kits, top coating really does make the paint tougher, and I've actually painted some master grade kits using this method. So at this point I proceed to layering paint until I get to about 4 or so coats, or until I get the opaque look that I want. Here you can see that the blue color has been applied nice and level, and I'll now proceed with detail painting the underside of the Jim's foot. Since most of the designs are raised, it's not too hard to paint them. I just had to be really careful that my hands don't shake and that I pay extra attention to where the raised part of the designs end. Also, I use a cheap number 0 brush and paint with a slightly thicker consistency than the blue paint used for the main foot color. So here's the output so far. This kit is now ready for panel lining and weathering. I think that since my goal is to just add a flat color, I think that using Reeves or any other artist acrylics is good enough, especially when the model will just be displayed. As you can see, the paint finish is generally okay. It just goes down a bit thicker than Tamiya, but the details don't get obscured that much. Hand painting is a good way to start customizing your kits since it doesn't really require a lot of new skills to learn other than properly mixing paint with water and hand brushing itself. There are no fumes, so if you have kids in the house, it's okay, especially if you have little space to work with. The colors stand out, and while I can't say that I'm able to produce anything that's competition ready using this method, I get the satisfaction of painting and having a kit that I can pose and photograph to my heart's content. It's not going to win anything, but the whole method is just so relaxing for me. Okay, so in the next video, I'll share how I proceed with weathering and panel lining this kit. So until then, please do like, comment, and subscribe.